Jumbo, this is part 2. We've looked at bacteria. You're going to use this bacteria and virus sheet, and this time we're looking at viruses, which is on the back of the page. So you got to turn it over, find the next page, and we look at viruses. Viruses are even smaller than bacteria. Now recall, bacteria are considered to be the smallest forms of life. So viruses turned out to be borderline. They have characteristics of living things and non-living things. They're so small they can only be seen with an electron microscope, and this gives you a sense of the scale, that they're in the order of 100 times smaller than bacteria. They are simpler. They contain genetic information, DNA or RNA, stuff you learn about in grade 10, that's wrapped in a protein coat. Their reproduction is very interesting, whereas bacteria just split in 2, so you'd start with 1 and then 2 and then 4 and then 8, and you double each generation. Viruses simply go into a cell, and they either completely go in or they inject their DNA or RNA in, and they take over the cell. So it's much like saying, hey, I'm going to go into a Ford plant that's making pickup trucks, and now I'm going to make military tanks. You change what the cell is designed to make. And instead of going from 1 to 2 to 4, often these things will go up by a factor of 100. They'll make 100 virus particles, and that will rupture out of the cell and go invade 100 other cells, and those 100 will make another 100, so you're up to 10,000. So after 3 generations, you're up to 1,000,000. And that's how viruses can be difficult to us, because they reproduce so rapidly. Unless we have a quick response, then the virus gets the upper hand, and then we have to somehow fight back. So viruses have the characteristics of living and non-living things. They're in a gray area. In general, they're considered to be non-living, but they're in the world of biology. This is still open to debate. Living characteristics. They're able to reproduce, but only in a host. They have to be in a living cell. And they contain DNA or RNA, which is genetic information. But they don't move by themselves, they don't use energy, they don't grow. And as we said earlier, can only reproduce in a host. And one of the strange things is some can actually be crystallized. That means you suck the water out of them and then later reactivate it. Don't try that with a person. Antibiotics are useless in treating viral infections. So if you have a cold, that will be caused by a cold virus. You go to a doctor and say, gee, I need something for this cold. The doctor is going to say, no, antibiotics will not help. You're going to have to rely on your immune system to get rid of that virus. Another method of defense is vaccination and the body's own immune system. And we'll talk about that in a later video. Here are examples of viral diseases. There are many, many, many examples out there. And of course, this year we have COVID-19. In 2003, we had something called SARS. There's been avian flu, that means from birds. There's been swine flu. And these are flus that jump from one animal, one species to, in our case, humans. Things like mumps, you now can get immunized for, and polio, and those are very important. Because some of these diseases listed there are deadly. So having vaccines to tackle these diseases is a big advantage. In our next video on viruses, we're going to give you more notes, more information on this, and you may find that it's almost too much information. It'll be a little bit denser, but it's more for interest than something I would test you on.